It was a warm Saturday afternoon when I first noticed my neighbor, Mark, walking his golden retriever, Rusty, through our neighborhood. I'd seen them around before, of course, but never paid much attention. Our neighborhood is one of those suburban areas where everyone knows each other by sight, but not necessarily by name. I'd wave occasionally, but that was about it. I was sitting on my porch, enjoying the sunshine with a book in my hand, when I saw them heading toward the community park that sits at the end of our street. The park is a beautiful space with open fields, a small pond, and walking trails that wind through clusters of oak trees. It's where everyone in the neighborhood goes to relax, exercise, or walk their dogs. I decided that it was too nice a day to stay home, so I bookmarked my page, grabbed my water bottle, and headed to the park myself. Let me tell you a bit about this park. It's not huge, but it's spacious enough that you can find a quiet corner if you want some solitude. There's a designated dog area where people let their pets run free, but most folks just walk the trails with their dogs on leashes. The park has become something of a social hub for our community, especially on weekends when families bring picnics and kids play on the swings and slides. As I entered the park, I could see Mark and Rusty in the distance. Mark was tall with dark hair that caught the sunlight, and Rusty was this beautiful golden retriever with a coat that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. Rusty was known in the neighborhood for being friendly but extremely energetic. I'd heard stories from other neighbors about how he would practically drag Mark around during their walks, always eager to explore, to sniff every tree, to greet every person and animal they encountered. I found a bench near the pond and sat down, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. Families were scattered across the grassy areas. A few people were jogging along the paths, and ducks were gliding across the water's surface. It was one of those perfect days that makes you grateful for simple pleasures. I watched as Mark tried to keep Rusty under control. The dog was clearly excited, pulling on his leash, tail wagging furiously as he spotted ducks by the pond's edge. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. A squirrel darted across the path in front of them, and Rusty lunged forward with such force that the leash slipped right out of Mark's hand. In an instant, the golden retriever was free, bounding after the squirrel with wild abandon. I heard Mark shout, "Rusty, no, come back." But Rusty was already halfway across the park, his golden fur flashing in the sunlight as he ran. The look of panic on Mark's face was immediate. Anyone who has ever lost control of a pet knows that feeling. The sudden surge of adrenaline, the fear that your beloved animal might run into traffic or get lost. Mark started running after Rusty, but the dog was much faster, darting between picnicking families and sending a group of pigeons scattering into the air. Without really thinking about it, I put down my book and water bottle and jumped up from the bench. "I'll help," I called out to Mark, who gave me a grateful nod as he continued to chase after his dog. There was something about the urgency of the moment that made me want to help this man I barely knew. Perhaps it was the genuine concern on his face, or maybe it was just my natural instinct to lend a hand when someone is in trouble. Rusty was heading toward the wooded area of the park, and I realized I could cut him off if I took a shortcut through a small grove of trees. I'm not usually one for spontaneous sprinting, but there I was, running through the park like I was training for a marathon. My heart was pounding, partly from the exertion and partly from the excitement of the chase. It's funny how quickly we can be pulled out of our routine and thrown into an unexpected adventure. As I ran, I could see Rusty up ahead, now distracted by a family's picnic. The poor family looked startled as this golden blur rushed toward their blanket, sniffing eagerly at their sandwiches. "Excuse me," I called out as I approached. "Sorry about this. Trying to catch a runaway dog." The family seemed more amused than annoyed, thankfully, but Rusty had already moved on, spotting something else that caught his interest. I continued my pursuit, now joined by Mark, who had caught up from another direction. "Thanks for helping," he panted as we both paused for a moment, trying to spot where Rusty had gone. "I'm Mark, by the way." "I'm Alex," I replied, slightly out of breath. "I've seen you around the neighborhood, and I've definitely seen Rusty before." "He's never done this," Mark explained, looking worried. "The leash just slipped right out of my hand. He gets so excited when he sees squirrels." "We'll find him," I assured him, though I wasn't entirely confident. The park was large, and Rusty was fast. But there was something about Mark's grateful smile that made me determined to help him catch his dog. We spotted Rusty again near the children's playground, where he was receiving enthusiastic pats from delighted kids. Their parents looked concerned, though, clearly wondering where this dog's owner was. Mark and I approached slowly, not wanting to startle Rusty into running again. If we come at him from different angles, we might be able to corner him, I suggested. Mark nodded, and we split up, approaching the playground from opposite sides. As we got closer, one of the children spotted us and pointed. "Is this your doggy?" a little girl asked, her hand buried in Rusty's golden fur. "Yes, he is," Mark replied, relief evident in his voice. "And he's been a very naughty boy, running away like that." But just as Mark reached for Rusty's collar, something else caught the dog's attention. A frisbee soaring through the air nearby. And just like that, he was off again, racing toward the frisbee game happening in the open field. "Oh, come on," Mark groaned, and I couldn't help but laugh despite the frustration. There was something comically persistent about Rusty's determination to experience every exciting thing the park had to offer. We continued our chase, now heading toward the frisbee players. I found myself running alongside Mark, and there was something strangely intimate about this shared mission. Two strangers, united by the common goal of catching an overexcited golden retriever. I noticed things about him I hadn't before. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled apologetically at people we passed, the sound of his laugh when Rusty did something particularly ridiculous, the way he ran with a slight lean forward, determined but careful. The frisbee players were a group of college students who seemed more than happy to have their game interrupted by an enthusiastic dog. Rusty had inserted himself into their circle and was jumping up, trying to catch the frisbee. The students were laughing, some of them even encouraging Rusty by deliberately throwing the frisbee low enough for him to try to catch it. "That's my dog," Mark called out as we approached. "Sorry about the interruption." "No worries, man," one of the students replied. "He's awesome. Great jumps." As if to demonstrate, Rusty leaped into the air and actually managed to catch the frisbee, much to the delight of the students who cheered loudly. Rusty pranced around proudly with his prize, tail wagging furiously. This was our chance. While Rusty was distracted by his success and the attention he was receiving, Mark and I approached from different sides. I moved slowly, trying not to alert Rusty to my intentions. Mark did the same from the other direction. We exchanged a look across the circle, a silent communication that we were ready to make our move. "Now," Mark said, and we both lunged forward. I managed to grab one end of the frisbee while Mark got hold of Rusty's collar. The dog seemed surprised but not upset, looking between us with what I swear was a doggy grin, as if this had all been a great game from his perspective. "Gotcha," Mark said triumphantly, quickly attaching the leash to Rusty's collar. "You are in so much trouble, mister." Despite his words, he was smiling, clearly relieved to have his dog back. The students applauded our successful capture, and we thanked them for their help, or at least for not making our job harder by encouraging Rusty too much. As we walked away from the frisbee game, both of us were breathing hard from the exertion of the chase. Mark turned to me, his face flushed from running, and said, "I can't thank you enough. I don't know if I would have caught him without your help." "Happy to help," I replied, suddenly aware that I was sweaty and probably red-faced myself. That was quite an adventure. We found a bench nearby and sat down to catch our breath. Rusty settled at our feet, seemingly exhausted from his escapades, but looking thoroughly pleased with himself. For a moment, we just sat there in companionable silence, watching the activities in the park continue around us. "I've seen you around the neighborhood," Mark said finally, turning slightly to face me. "You live in the blue house on Maple Street, right?" I was surprised he had noticed. "Yes, that's me. I've seen you and Rusty on your walks too." "I've always meant to introduce myself properly," he admitted. "But you know how it is. You see someone, you think about saying hello, and then the moment passes." I knew exactly what he meant. How many potential friendships never materialize because of those missed moments? "Well, I'd say chasing your dog through the park together counts as a proper introduction," I replied with a smile. Mark laughed, and I noticed how the sound seemed to resonate somewhere in my chest. It was a warm laugh, genuine and unguarded. "Definitely more memorable than a simple hello over the fence," he agreed. As we sat there, I found myself studying his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his dark hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, the smile lines around his eyes that suggested he laughed often. There was something about him that made me want to know more, to understand what made him laugh, what he thought about as he walked Rusty through our neighborhood each day. "So," I ventured, "apart from chasing your dog through public parks, what do you do?" He smiled at that. "I'm an architect. I work from home most days, which is why Rusty and I get to take long walks during lunch breaks." "What about you?" "I'm a freelance graphic designer," I told him. "Also work from home, though I don't have a Rusty to force me outside regularly." "Maybe you should get one," he suggested. "Dogs are great for making sure you don't spend the whole day staring at a computer screen. Or maybe I should just borrow yours occasionally," I said without thinking, then felt a flush of embarrassment at my own forwardness. But Mark's eyes lit up. "That's not a bad idea, actually. Rusty loves company, and I could always use help wearing him out. He clearly has more energy than I can handle alone." There was something in the way he said it, a hint of invitation, perhaps, that made my heart beat a little faster. I found myself nodding. "I'd like that. He seems like a great dog, even if he is a bit of an escape artist." "He's the best," Mark said, reaching down to ruffle Rusty's fur. The dog looked up adoringly at his owner, all innocence now, as if he hadn't just led us on a wild chase through the entire park. Though today wasn't his finest moment. We both laughed, and I noticed how easy it felt to be sitting here with him, how natural the conversation flowed between us. It wasn't often that I felt this comfortable with someone I had just properly met. As we continued talking, the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the park. Families were packing up their picnics, the frisbee players had moved on, and the park was growing quieter. I was surprised at how quickly the time had passed. "I should probably get Rusty home for his dinner," Mark said eventually, though he didn't make any move to stand up. "He's had quite the day?" "Of course," I replied, feeling a twinge of disappointment that our time together was coming to an end. I stood up, and Mark did the same, Rusty immediately alert and ready for whatever came next. "Thanks again for your help today," Mark said, looking directly into my eyes. There was a moment, just a brief moment, where something passed between us. A recognition, perhaps, of something more than just neighborly goodwill. "Anytime," I replied, holding his gaze. "Really?" He smiled, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. There was something about that smile, warm, genuine, with just a hint of shyness, that made my heart skip a beat. I hadn't expected this, hadn't been looking for any kind of connection when I decided to help chase down a runaway dog. Yet here we were. "Would you maybe want to grab coffee sometime?" Mark asked, the words coming out in a rush as if he'd had to work up the courage to say them. "Or we could walk Rusty together. He'd love the company, and so would I." I felt a smile spread across my face. "I'd really like that," I said honestly. "Both options sound great." "How about tomorrow morning?" he suggested. "There's a great coffee shop on the corner of Oak and Pine that allows dogs on their patio. We could meet there around 10. "Perfect," I agreed, trying not to sound too eager even though I was already looking forward to it. We exchanged phone numbers, our fingers brushing briefly as I handed him my phone to enter his number. That small touch, just the lightest contact of skin against skin, sent a surprising jolt through me. I wondered if he felt it too. As we prepared to go our separate ways, Mark hesitated for a moment. "You know," he said, "I've walked Rusty through this park hundreds of times, but I think today might be my favorite visit yet." The sincerity in his voice made my heart flutter. "Mine too," I replied softly. We said our goodbyes, and I watched as Mark and Rusty headed toward the park exit. Rusty trotted happily beside his owner, apparently having learned his lesson about running off, at least for today. Mark glanced back once and waved, a gesture that seemed to hold promise. As I walked home, I couldn't help but smile to myself. When I'd left my house earlier that day, I'd had no idea that chasing a golden retriever would lead to, whatever this was. A potential friendship? Maybe something more? It was too soon to tell, but there was definitely something there. A spark, a connection that had formed in the midst of chaos. The next morning, I found myself taking extra care with my appearance before heading to the coffee shop. I told myself it was just coffee with a neighbor, nothing to be nervous about, but the flutter in my stomach suggested otherwise. As I walked the few blocks to the coffee shop, I thought about how unexpected life can be. One moment you're reading a book in the park, and the next you're chasing a dog across the grass. Your heart pounding not just from the exertion, but from the smile of a stranger who might not be a stranger for long. I saw them before they saw me. Mark sitting at an outdoor table with Rusty lying contentedly at his feet. Mark was looking at his phone, occasionally glancing up as if watching for my arrival. Rusty spotted me first, his tail immediately starting to wag as I approached. Mark looked up, following Rusty's gaze, and when our eyes met, his face broke into a warm smile that made my heart skip a beat. "You came," he said as I reached their table, sounding genuinely pleased. "Of course," I replied, taking the seat across from him. "I wouldn't miss it." Rusty got up and came to greet me, resting his head on my knee in a gesture of doggy affection. I scratched behind his ears, earning an appreciative look from both dog and owner. "He remembers you," Mark said, watching us with a smile. "Rusty doesn't warm up to everyone so quickly." "Well, we did have quite the bonding experience yesterday," I pointed out, smiling down at the golden retriever. "Nothing brings people together like a good dog chase." Mark laughed, and there it was again, that feeling in my chest, like something opening up, making space for something new. As we settled into conversation over coffee, Rusty a contented presence at our feet, I couldn't help but think that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected moments. Like when your neighbor's dog escapes, and in helping to catch it, you find something you weren't even looking for, a connection, a possibility, a breath caught in a moment of recognition. And as Mark told me stories about Rusty's previous adventures, though none quite as dramatic as yesterday's escape, his eyes crinkling with laughter, his hand occasionally brushing against mine as we both reached for the sugar, I knew that whatever happened next, friendship, romance, or something in between, I was grateful for Rusty's impulsive chase after that squirrel. Sometimes it takes a runaway dog to lead you exactly where you need to be. Total _char_count, 18,746.